melụ, amala onye dị mma na onye dị njọ. Asị na anya na-afụ obi, asị na anya na-afụ ime obi.
Once upon a time, there lived a wealthy man named Obi. Obi was the wealthiest farmer in the kingdom. He had much wealth because of his wise business and investment mind. He exported his goods to far kingdoms in the east. Because of his wealth, according to tradition, Obi was fortunate to have 4 wives: Uju, Chioma, Ngozi, and Nkechi. Each wife had children for him. Uju had 2 sons and 1 girl. Chioma, the second wife, also had 2 sons but 2 girls. Ngozi, the third wife, had 3 boys. And Nkechi, the fourth wife, had only 2 girls. She had no sons. Obi had a big house and massive rooms and quarters for each of his wives and their children. In his own room, he lived alone. He would go to his wives' rooms anytime he wanted to sleep with any of them. However, none of his wives entered his room unless invited. The only person who entered his room freely was his close man-servant, Ndube. Ndube had been with Obi since he married his first wife, Uju. At that time, Obi was not as wealthy as he was today. Because of his great contributions to the kingdom, the king held a ceremony for Obi. Obi was given the highest chieftaincy title in the land. There was huge celebration in the land, and many people were happy. Obi was well loved and respected. The people loved him. He was a nice person. He helped everyone, the needy, the poor, and widows. He was so loved that some people wanted him to rule the kingdom because of his business mind and his kind spirit. The ceremony took place in his home as Obi wanted to host the celebrations himself. So the king and many invited guests came to his massive mansion. It was big enough to take everyone. Obi had his wives prepare all types of food. There was drinking, dancing, music everywhere. In the end, the chieftaincy title was bestowed upon Obi by the king, and the celebration was a success. Now, the next day, the house was now quiet. The servants were moving around cleaning the home after last night's party. While they were doing so, they heard a scream. It could be heard coming from Obi's room. Ndube, the manservant, and many others ran to Obi's room immediately. Once there, they saw the maid standing in shock. She had her broom in her hand. "What is it?" they all shouted. "What is it?" Then she pointed at Obi's bed without speaking. At the end of the bed, by the wall, was Obi's dead body. He was lying on his stomach. At first, what they were seeing did not register immediately until they saw blood on his bed. Then Ndube went into action immediately. He went to Obi, turned him around, and then shook him. He didn't wake up. Then, to his shock, he confirmed that Obi was indeed dead. "How can that be?" he said. "This man was alive just a few hours ago. What happened?" He turned to the maid and shouted. The girl was now crying. She said she came into the room to clean as usual. She knocked, but there was no response. So she believed that Obi had left for the farm as was his practice. But to her surprise, he was still here with blood on his bed. Now at this time, only Ndube and the servants ran when they heard the screams. Other members of the family had not heard anything. So Ndube sent out servants to inform the whole family. Obviously, this was a devastating shock to the wives and children. The king had to be informed immediately. Obi was a very influential man in the land. The king had to know. Once informed, the king dispatched his royal guards to Obi's house. Once the royal guards arrived, they saw Obi's body. He was surrounded by his wives who were crying. One of his sons, Aguna, was shouting that his father had been killed and they had to find out who killed him. He said that the blood on his bed showed that there was foul play. Upon closer observation, the royal guards could see blood on the bed, but nothing on Obi's body. There was no bruise on his body, no scars, no open wounds, nothing. His body was intact. So where did the blood come from? They asked. The royal guards turned and asked if anyone had come into Obi's room last night before the maid came this morning. But everyone denied coming into his room. No one entered Obi's room without his permission. Of course, except for Ndube. Ndube said that the last time he saw Obi was during the ceremony. Because of the celebration, he was relieved of his duties that day, and Obi went to bed on his own. The royal guards now left to notify the king of what they had seen and confirm that indeed Obi was dead. Uju could not wait for the king, so she sent her maid to get the Ezemo so that he could reveal what had happened. But Ndube objected, saying that they had to wait for the king. "Who are you to question my orders?" Uju shouted. Now, this made the wives argue amongst themselves. Some supported Uju. She was, after all, the first wife, the most senior wife, and had the right to make such decisions. The others wanted to wait for the king. They agreed with Ndube. All this time they were arguing, Obi's dead body was still in the room. Then Uchenna shouted. He was Aguna's older brother, Obi's first son. He said that the Ezemo should be sent for, and that was the final decision as the first son. "First son, my foot," Choma said. "What do you mean by that?" Uju shouted. But before anyone could respond, the Ezemo came in. The king had already sent for him. The Ezemo looked at Obi, then at the blood on the bed. By this time, Ngozi's 3 sons had started fidgeting. Ngozi was the third wife. The Ezemo said that Obi had been poisoned. Immediately the wives turned to Ndube and the servants. "What did he eat? What did he give him?" they all asked. That night, all the wives had cooked. No one particular wife was assigned to cook that day as it was a ceremony. So all of them cooked, and everyone ate from all the pots that they had cooked. So who gave him the food he ate? In other words, his own plate was intentionally poisoned, and the one responsible for serving him that food should have been Ndube. "What did you do to my husband?" Uju shouted. But Ndube was confused. He seemed shocked. "I did not do anything. I did not serve him his meal that day." "Will you people shut up?" Dezemo said. "This was not poisoned by food, but poisoned by a she-cobra." "What?" everyone said. "What is a she-cobra?" Ngozi asked. Dezemo explained that it was a creature who had the ability to appear as a beautiful virgin to the human eye. However, it was a deadly creature. After it made love with you, it would kill the victim. The blood on the bed is from that creature. The blood had a particular scent. He could smell it. That was when one of the maids in the room shouted, "I saw them! I saw them!" She was pointing at Ngozi's sons. "I saw them! My friend, will you shut up? You saw whom? Will you shut your mouth up?" But the maid went on. She said that she was passing Obi's room when she saw the 3 sons, their father Obi, and a young girl go into his room last night. She remembered this because she noted that the girl was very beautiful. Everyone knew that Obi liked beautiful women. Now, the boys at this point, out of fear, confessed and said that the girl's name was Akuna. They had met her in the market and brought her to their father as a gift for the celebration. They did not know she was evil. They did not have any malicious intent, they said. "But why didn't you say this sooner?" Nkechi said. Nkechi was the 4th wife. When the royal guards asked, you kept quiet. "What is your plan? To kill our husband and share his wealth? Eh? Is that it?" "Shut up," Ngozi shouted. "Shut up." Seeing that she was trapped, Ngozi turned to Uju saying, "Please help me, help my children. They are innocent." Uchenna shouted, "Help them how? How dare they bring that evil creature into our home? They must be punished." The three sons were taken away. It was decided by the king that they would be beheaded for killing their father. The case had been solved, and Obi was to be buried. Now, while others had moved on, Uju had not. Something was not adding up. She knew all the children in this house. Yes, Ngozi's children can be stupid, but they would not kill their own father. But then why did this evil creature target them? Uju was confused. What could she do? Her mind was troubled. So Uju went to Afam's house. Afam was the Onuhu of the land. He was Obi's friend. They grew up together. Afam knew Obi longer than anyone. Uju told Afam all that had happened as it unfolded. Afam kept quiet and listened to her. Then he said, "I do not know about any evil creature. What I know is that Obi had acquired a new land to farm. He was very happy to expand. The only problem was the land was not fertile for planting. It was fertile with gold." "Ah!" Uju shouted. "Shh! Keep quiet, keep quiet. Not many people know this," Afam said, "except the king. As you can imagine, that land is worth more than any money. I suspect that he was killed because of that," Afam said. Now Uju was afraid. Her husband had mentioned to her the night before the ceremony that their lives were about to change. But she noticed that he seemed worried and absent-minded that day. It was as if he was afraid. So now, who got to him? Uju asked herself, because she believed that Ngozi's children were not bright enough to come up with a plan to kill. Afam did not seem to know either. "This is bigger than we think. It is not as simple," he said. "Those boys may be innocent. The question is then, who did it? And how can they get the person to confess?" Of all the wives, the only one Uju could trust was Nkechi. For you see, Nkechi had no sons. Obi was more important to Nkechi alive than dead, because without sons, Nkechi could not inherit anything as was tradition. She was the least suspect. So, Uju told Nkechi and all their children of her suspicions. She did not tell them about the gold. They may not like Ngozi, she said, but Ngozi's sons are not the brightest. Someone else is pulling the strings. So both wives, Uju and Nkechi, and their children asked their servants to put their ears to the ground and investigate what had happened. One of the maids reported that for the past few weeks, she noticed that one of Chioma's sons, Chioma was the second wife, brought a new manservant for their father. Normally, on the day the body was found, it would have been Ndube who would have found the body instead of the maid. Before a maid goes in to clean, Ndube would have made sure that Obi had left them. She found it strange that Ndube was no longer on top of Obi's affairs. And then, ever since that day, she had not even seen the new manservant again. By this time, Ngozi's sons had only 1 week before they were to be beheaded. As was tradition, Obi would be buried the following day. Time was moving fast. Uju then recruited Ngozi. At this point, Ngozi had the most to lose. Ngozi was more than happy to confront Chioma and find out where the new manservant had gone. The man must have killed Obi and left, and now they want to pin it on her children. Immediately, she went to Chioma's room. She bounced on her. "You witch! It is your children that will die, not mine. You killer! Bring out that man! Bring him out! "The man you sent to kill our husband." Chioma was shocked, but she fought back. Before you know it, both women were fighting. Kitty kitty, ish, ish. The children had to separate them. "What is it? What is going on?" Chioma's children asked. That was when Uchenna told them what was happening and how they believed that it was the new manservant that killed their father. Chioma's first son, Emeka, said that the man was innocent. One day, their father had approached Emeka saying he needed a new manservant. Like everyone, he was surprised. "What is it? What happened, father? What happened to Ndube?" But their father had said that Ndube was now getting old and he needed a new manservant, and that was all he said. So, following his father's instructions, Emeka brought a new manservant. The night of the ceremony, the man had gone to see his family. When he left, father was still alive and well. The man's family lived in another village, so he was unaware of what was happening, even though Ngozi shouted, "Bring him back, let him swear. How can we believe what you have said? After all, we all know that your mother hates Uju, the first wife. We know that you wish that you were the first son." Now, this broke out into another fight. As the family was arguing, Afam, the Onuhu, walked in. He came in with an Ezemo that they had never seen before. This man was powerful. He was from the Okrikri kingdom. He could see the past and the future. Afam said the Ezemo will help them find who killed Obi. The Ezemo, sitting down, explained that he could sense the murderer lived in this house. Then he placed a mirror before them. He asked everyone to line up and walk towards the mirror, look into the mirror, and the mirror would see into their hearts. The mirror was Ndemili's mirror, a sacred mirror that could reveal the secrets of a man and make him confess. Once the man confessed, he would run mad. So, under Uju's instructions, everyone reluctantly lined up before the mirror. One after the other, they looked into the mirror as required. Uju and her children scaled through with no issues. Everyone held their breath as Chioma and her children went through the mirror. But to everyone's surprise, nothing happened. "You see, I said it. My children and I are innocent." Ngozi went through, and nothing. Then Nkechi and her children went through, and nothing. Then it was the turn of the servants. They all went, but still nothing. Then everyone turned looking for Ndube, but Ndube was nowhere to be found. Then suddenly, Ndube entered the house. Uju was about to explain to him what was happening so that he could come before the mirror and look into it, but the Ezemo stopped her. He stood up. "Here, take this mirror, my son. Clean it for me." Ndube was surprised, but not shocked. So he took the mirror and was about to clean it when he looked into it and his eyes transformed. And then he confessed. All this time, he had been jealous of Obi's children. He had served Obi for so many years, but still he did not get as much as he gave his sons, who were wayward. One day, one of the royal guards from the king approached him saying that if he got rid of Obi, lands would be given to him where he could build his own home. So using his grandfather's black magic, he summoned a she-cobra. He knew that Obi liked beautiful women, so he sent the creature to Ngozi's children, and they fell for the trap. Now, everything fell into place for Afam. He began to understand. He went immediately and informed the cabinet members. As they all knew who, he called for an emergency meeting, and they confronted the king. The king was angry. In anger, he confessed. "How dare you question my integrity?" he said. He was envious of Obi all along. Everyone respected Obi as if Obi was the king. When Obi found the land with gold, the king wanted it for himself, but Obi refused to let it go. The king had white men who were waiting ready to pay for the land, but Obi refused, saying that the gold had to be used for their people. Once he confessed, Afam, as the Onuhu, dethroned him. The king and his family were exiled. Ndube lived as a madman, and Ngozi's children were released. And finally, Obi was buried. Thank you so much for listening to another episode. If you liked it, please subscribe, like, comment, share. Thank you to those who have subscribed. Thank you to those who have supported. Until next time, goodbye.